welcome to another episode of Jared and the brother of Jared. I am Jared.
I'm the brother of Jared.
Welcome, Andy. Good to see you again today.
Good to see you, Jared.
How was the Super Bowl? Last time we talked, it was Super Bowl week.
I had a great time watching the Super Bowl. I thought it was great.
And what did you have to eat?
Okay, I'm trying to remember what we had to eat. Oh, pretzel bites.
Oh, yeah,
Pretzel
you mentioned the
bites.
pretzel bites, and I said I was coming over, and instead I watched it from another location.
Is that all you're gonna say? You watched it from another
That's all I'm
location?
going to say.
Okay, all right, that's
That's
cool.
all I'm going to say. Needless to say, it was a very awesome location, and I had a great time.
Yeah, what did you think of the game itself?
The game itself was awesome. Very competitive. I thought, I will say this, for the first time in a long time, the game did not depend on the officials.
Well, that's saying something, right?
It is saying
That's
something.
saying
Yeah,
something. I thought
very
it was a really
competitive. I thought,
exciting game,
yeah,
and it was fun. It
and
was
it
a lot
made
of fun
even
to
better
watch.
with your pretzel sticks,
Yeah, pretzel bites.
pretzel bites.
We had a lot of other things too, but I don't remember right now in this moment what all it was. There was a lot though. We had a lot of good food.
That's good. Good, good, good. And the Chiefs won. I think you predicted that.
I did predict the Chiefs. Yeah.
Yeah, they did win. So congratulations.
I was kind of excited when that happened because I had predicted it, and it's not often that I predict things accurately in sports.
You did
So,
well. You did well. Um, so after the Super Bowl, I got some good news. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but I sold my daughter's car.
you sold your daughter's car.
Yeah, she asked me to sell it, so it's not like I sold the car out from under her. She asked me to sell the car,
Oh, that's good.
but
Nice
I'm really
clarification
happy.
there.
I'm really happy we sold the car. Uh, a
That
2013 Mini Cooper. I got what I wanted out of it,
uh-huh.
and now I don't have to fix it anymore.
Congratulations. That's amazing. So,
That's
but
amazing.
you you had to do a lot of repairs on that.
All the time. Yeah, I think it was in the garage getting fixed more than it was on the road being driven, to tell you the truth.
Uh,
And I don't know, maybe we just got a lemon from the very beginning.
yeah.
Obviously we did. But I don't care for minis.
Years back, I thought about getting one because I kind of like the look of them, and they seem kind of cool. But ultimately decided against it.
Good choice.
Yeah,
They're
sounds
fun.
like it.
I mean, it had the turbo and it was a fast car. But man, there were so many issues with it.
Was it a stick?
No, it was manual.
Oh, okay.
It was manual, but we did timing chain, we did turbo lines, we did um, crankshaft gasket. We did
Wow,
lots of stuff.
that's pretty ambitious.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and
That
and now I know how to fix minis. So I guess maybe I can open up a side hustle, just fix
maybe you
minis.
should just that might come in handy. You could make a living that way, I guess.
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about cars, and talking about how as parents we handle cars with our kids, and then we'll also talk about what we drove as kids. I think I drove the coolest car out there as a teenager, but maybe you want to argue with that. But this is going to be a fun episode. I love talking about cars, and especially the cars that I drove. I've made some good decisions on cars. I've made some horrible decisions on cars, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But Andy, tell me. I mean, the reason why this topic came up is because you are considering maybe getting a different car because you have a teenager who needs a car.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I was always that guy who said, "I'm not gonna buy my teenagers cars. They can get a job and buy their own car."
Right?
Because that's kind of ideally that's what we did when we were kids and everything. Although you did a better job of that than I did. Um, but
You made it.
um,
Yeah.
but my wife's been driving a Buick Enclave around for a while. It's been paid for a long time.
Those are the best kinds of cars.
Yeah,
Paid
paid
ones.
cars. Yes, those are the best. They really are. It's a great car. She loves it. I like it, which kind of surprised me because at the time that we bought it, I was very skeptical
Mhm.
because Buick, right? But it's been a great car. It's been a great car. I
Yeah,
mean, problems with the air conditioning, but that happens to most cars here in Las Vegas.
for sure.
Um, but it's not new anymore. I wouldn't say it's older, but it still runs great and everything.
Yeah,
But we have 2 kids that are now driving age, and we got a daughter who's graduating high school, and, she needs a way to get to and from, college in the fall, and, she works hard, but cars are so expensive. I
yeah.
really don't to expect her to just buy her own car, um,
Hmm.
that's kind of a tough ask nowadays, and now we have this car that's kinda getting old, and so now I'm thinking, well, we could let the kids use that, and then maybe,
Get
um,
yourself a nicer rig,
my
right?
wife gets a newer car, and everybody's happy, It's
So,
paid for.
but I think this is a new development because, when we were in high school, at least my main goal in high school was I got to get myself a car because it's freedom, right? I want my
Yeah,
own car. I'm going to do what it takes to get my own car. And that's what I did.
right.
But nowadays, it's pretty, man, with the price of used cars nowadays, let alone new cars. I mean,
Yeah,
used cars and new cars, they're pretty much the same price in a lot of
used
cases.
and new cars, yeah, there's, uh, not much difference at right now. Which is wild because when we were kids, you could pick up a car for a few $100 and it would
Yeah,
get you from point A to point B, and it might be actually kind of cool in some cases. You had like older like muscle cars that were still around back then, that you could
yeah.
pick up for a few bucks, and but now I feel like with my kids, their financial priorities have shifted a little bit because I've tried to instill them. I've tried to teach them from the various mistakes that I've made in adulthood, and try to impart that wisdom of how I would have done things differently to stay out of debt and everything. So, my daughter is working and she's saving all her money, and for her to like spend all that on a car seems a little risky,
Yeah.
in today's economy, when with so many other things to consider.
So, what have you decided to do? Are you gonna give her a car and go
I
against everything that we've ever stood for 30 years?
I think I am, but I kind of see it like we're getting a new car anyway, and we have another perfectly good car that still runs, so that's fine if she drives it,
Yeah,
you know?
I totally get it. In fact, I mentioned we sold my daughter's Mini Cooper, and now she's driving one of our older cars until she can buy herself another car. But herein is the problem. She bought that Mini a couple of years ago when interest rates were a few points lower.
Yeah,
So now, whatever she gets into, uh, the payment's going to be higher on something that is, dare I say, worse.
right.
So that's what we have to contend with. And so, meanwhile, I let her drive my 2007 Camry.
Mhm.
And I grew up just like you, saying, I'm never going to buy my kids a car. They can buy their own car. Yet I have my daughter uh, driving the Camry that I bought. I did find a, an old Honda for $750 for my 18-year-old. But then I have
$750.
$750.
Was it, like, missing the transmission or something? Like, what
And
kind
some
of?
paint and yeah, but it runs. It's a Honda. And
Okay.
then I have another kid. Well, he's not a kid anymore, but he's driving the old Chevy Tahoe that I
Yeah.
gave him. So none of my kids really now have a car that they purchased for
You know what
themselves.
it's starting to sound like is
Yeah.
like, you ever see the Mad Max movies where they're driving these old cars that, from decades before the apocalypse, and they're just like repurposing these old machines and trying to hold them together and everything. It
Yep.
seems like we're coming
We're
into
there.
that now.
Well, I wonder if that's behind the popularity of YouTube channels like South Main Auto and Fab Rats and all these guys who are taking these old cars
Yeah.
and they're fixing them up.
Well, that reminds me also of Cuba, right?
Oh boy.
How
Yeah.
they're still driving around in cars from like 1950s Chevys and stuff. I don't know about now, but for a long time there, that's just a very what happened in Cuba because they weren't able to import cars from the United States and
Yeah.
everything. So they just had to use what they had there on the island, and they keep just recycling it. And
Yeah. Well, and
and
that's
this
really the reason why we kept fixing the Mini and why I fix my hey, my wife right now drives a 2012 Town and Country with 195,000 miles, and my goal is to get it to 200. But we keep putting money into it to fix it
yeah.
because the amount of money that it takes to buy a new car and the interest rates where they're at is ridiculous. And so, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're getting to a place where a lot of us would just rather spend the money to go fix the cars and drive them uh, really old than pay out all that money to get a brand new one.
Sorry about my barking dog in the background here.
Must have heard
She's
a
just
car driving by.
yeah, must be a car driving by. She's into cars too.
But that brings up a good question now. So old cars, and we drove old cars when we were younger. So as I think about you're gonna buy a car for your kid or give them your old car. What did you drive when you were their age?
Okay, so I drove kind of what mom and dad had around. And so when I uh at the time that I got my license, and see, our parents were they were always buying like used cars,
Yep.
just you
They're cheaper.
know just clunkers that you could afford, and then just it would get you to point A to point B. So this is in the 90s. Uh let's see, I got my license when I was 16, or I think was I 17? I don't recall. So that would have been about 1995-ish is when I
Mhm.
started driving. And they had an old 1978 Chevy Impala station wagon.
I love that thing.
It was a cool
It
car.
was
I mean, it had a
ugly.
big engine in it, and I
Huge.
used I used to put friends in that, and they'd sit, in the far back seat,
Yeah.
and the suspension, it was a real smooth ride and everything. It was a nice car, but it was huge, and it was kind of embarrassing, but I just
Uh-huh.
leaned into it. It's like, check out
Yeah,
my
so did I.
sweet ride, my 78 Impala station wagon. So we drove that around. Dad had a 90 something Geo Metro.
Another car that I
I
love.
I learned how to drive stick on that car.
Uh-huh.
Um, there was a Plymouth Reliant at one point,
Was
like
that
late
gray?
80s. Yeah, it was gray.
I think I remember that. I never drove that because by then I had my own clunker.
Right. Yeah, you were kind of out of the house by then. And then just before I moved to Las Vegas, Dad up and just bought this used Pontiac Bonneville one day. It was an 89 Pontiac Bonneville.
Okay.
So at the time it would have been about uh 12 years old, maybe
Hmm.
10,
Pretty new
11.
for our family. Yeah.
And it was a Pontiac Bonneville. He paid a
Good
few
car.
thousand for it, I think. And for some reason, I just started driving that car, and I just took it when I when I moved to it. Wasn't ever my car. It's not like he formally bought me the car,
Oh, that's how that
but
works. Okay.
I went up to college in Rexburg for a while, and I just took it. They said, yeah, just go ahead and take it with you. And then after that, after a year in Rexburg, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna move to Las Vegas. And
And you took it again.
I took it again, and it wasn't even really discussed.
Interesting.
other than I'm taking this car. Like if they didn't put up a fight, um, is quite gracious of them in hindsight. I just it's pretty
Uh,
cool,
that is
you know.
cool. Okay, so what's the first car you paid for?
The first car that I paid for was after I was living in Las Vegas for a little bit, and I needed a car because I had a job as a runner at a law firm, and I need something reliable to get around. That's
So you bought a
funny.
Mini Cooper.
No, it's funny because I needed something reliable, and so of course I bought a 1998 Pontiac Grand Am.
Hey, those are reliable.
Oh, you think?
Well, you say that. One of my cars was the copy of that, same engine, same everything, but the Chevy badge, the Corsica,
Oh, I remember that one.
and it
Yeah,
had
the
the same engine.
Corsica.
And you know what? Kind of indestructible,
Yeah.
unless, well, your Grand Am apparently was not indestructible.
Well, I think part of it was maybe the heat because the first thing that started happening was it would start overheating like
Uh,
every day, and it was all I could do to keep the thing running. I think I tried replacing a radiator. I'd always have to, deal with that whole situation. And it's really kind of stressful because I have to drive all over the valley here in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the heat,
120 degrees, yeah.
and I'm like delivering these important documents that have got to be signed by such and such time, and I got to get them back. And I'm like looking at the temperature gauge on my car, like, oh no, am I gonna make it? you know. But eventually, the transmission went bad on that, and I had to get that repaired. And it was just it stopped working while I was still making payments on the thing,
Oh,
and it
no
was
words feeling in the world.
yeah, it was frustrating. Don't think it was a wise
Yeah,
purchase.
that is frustrating, man. So then you
Yeah.
had to roll that into another car and pay more than you wanted to pay.
Something like that. Yeah, I think I was married. I was married at the time. It was just after we got married, and then we started. I mean, it just sat there. I remember outside of our townhome, and
Hmm.
we would drive the other car around, and and my car would just sit there. And eventually, I sold it to some sucker for like $1,500 or something like that.
Pretty good deal.
Yeah.
A bad transmission. So that's interesting. So my first car, um, yeah, my experience was a little bit different. Like I said, in high school, I just wanted to buy a car, right?
Yeah.
So finally, I saved up enough money, sort of, to buy a 1977 Ford Granada.
That thing was awesome.
So here, take a look at this. Um, that's what we're talking about right there.
Yeah, that's
Man,
the one.
that looks exactly like my first car that I paid. It was either $500 or $750. I can't remember
It's just a
which.
few $100s.
Just a few $100. It had four-speed manual transmission, so four on the floor.
Oh, okay.
Had absolutely no suspension. They would bounce all over the road.
Yeah.
Um, but it was mine, and I made payments on it. That was a funny thing. It took me like 3 months to make payments on this thing to pay it off.
Payments on a $700 car or something. Look at the
Yeah,
grill on that. That's beautiful.
but yeah, oh man, that thing is so cool, and it was in great shape too. And in fact, that thing made it on TV.
On TV.
It did for a while. There was a commercial where we lived, and my car was the star of that commercial. Turns out there was a local ad agency who was doing a commercial for a Ford dealership in town, and they were doing a how Ford would last through the ages, so you could pass your car down from generation to generation, and now buy a new Ford, and how great it is that Ford has always been there, kind of a commercial.
Yeah.
And they needed a 1970s car in good shape because it was kind of a look back, and they
Yeah.
couldn't have a piece of garbage. They had to have a nice looking car.
Yeah.
And so I answered an ad in the newspaper, yes, in the classifieds, um, and I think I made something like $600.
So like the price of the car.
Yeah, exactly. So that commercial paid for my car.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know
How
that. That's
cool is that,
amazing.
right?
That's such a cool story.
Yeah.
There's another cool story with that car though.
Oh, how do you remember that story?
Why would I not remember that story?
Okay, let's see if our versions match. So
Okay,
we
I'm
went up
talking
in
about
the car and we went up. We were exploring the mountains around where we lived.
yeah, we're gonna see if we can find a spot to fish.
Uh huh.
And we went out, we go I don't know. This is what I remember. We drove around for a while, and then I think you were just like attempting to turn around or something like that, and you were backing up,
Mm.
and you backed up too far, and the car just went down into this, what was it, a
It
little
was
retention pond or
yeah,
something?
it was like teetering on the edge of this pond.
And you're like, I can make it.
Mm-mm. What happened was is we were turning up this road to go up this dirt road in this 1977 Ford Granada with no suspension, basically.
Yeah.
And there was a sign there, and I stopped to read the sign. Well, I thought I stopped to read the sign, and we rolled backwards. And by the time I realized that we were rolling backwards, we were just about over the edge of that pond,
Yeah.
and we kind of didn't know what to do. We put the parking brake on and we got out of the car. It was teetering. It was literally teetering, and we had to wait until some guy passed us in an old truck to pull us out.
Yeah, and I remember that guy. He was like a logging truck or something, and
Yeah,
he had a flat tire.
he did.
And with the flat tire and all, and he couldn't replace it. He didn't have a spare or something
Nope.
like that. And so he just hooked that thing up and he just pulled us right out.
And then we went home.
Yeah, and then we went home. It was pretty cool.
Yep.
Um, it was dark by the time we got out of there and everything, but it was a nice little adventure. I
It's a good
remember it
memorable
fondly.
story, right? Good memorable story.
Yep.
My second car that I actually paid money for was pretty cool. I wish I still had it. It was let me see. I think I have a picture of it here. Um, let's go with this one. This is not the exact paint color or anything, but it's pretty close to the same thing. I had a 1989 Ford
Oh yeah.
Ranger four-wheel drive. It
Yep.
looked very similar to this, same wheels. I think the
Yeah.
colors were reversed on the paint job. I think it was silver on top, red on the bottom. Same cab.
Yeah,
Uh,
that looks like the style and everything. I remember that thing.
thing was awesome, and the four-wheel drive was really cool. Um,
Had a
but
real stiff clutch, I remember.
it did. It was really stiff.
Yeah.
The thing about that car was um, I had to have the transmission fixed soon
Uh,
after buying it. And I realized it in that cab. Actually, now that I think of it, it wasn't that extended cab. It was just the single standard cab. And
mhm.
so what I remember is I'd carry a bunch of stuff with me, and all my stuff was always in the seat or right behind the seat. The thing was a mess. And so I was on a car lot one day and I saw a Chevy Corsica hatchback.
Uh-huh.
I said, I like that car, and I traded it.
You trade. So the Corsica came after the Ranger.
Corsica came after the Ranger, and I think it was a good buy. I mean, that's the car. I got married when I had that car. We had that car for several years. Um, didn't really didn't really break down. I mean, I changed some basic things like thermostats and alternators and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a great car. Never had any issues with it other than that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's a similar one to the Pontiac Grand Am,
Yep. Same exact thing, basically, just different badge.
right? Yeah. I actually liked the Grand Am, but like I said, I drove it around in the heat so much and it was really hard on it, and it just, you know.
Yeah. Quick side note on that. Maybe we're getting a little off topic, but when we moved to where we are now, we're in the desert north of Las Vegas, southern Utah, and it's hot in the summer. But people told me when I moved here that we came from the north, Washington State, where it was a lot colder. And people told me, well, first thing you do when you get down there is you got to change your battery because your car battery is going to die. And I thought, I just changed my battery. I'm going to be fine. Change your
Yep.
battery.
Yep.
It died within 3 months of living there. And just like clockwork, all three of our cars,
It
bam, bam,
does.
we had to change the battery.
Yep. And I find that, 6-year batteries will last a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, we've been here 3 years, and I've already replaced two batteries, I think,
Yeah.
and that's
I
after we
believe
moved
it.
here, so they only last a couple of years. The
Yeah.
heat is murder on batteries.
It is. It's crazy.
Anyway, so we talked about first cars. So now, question for you before we wrap this up here: if you were a teenager, well, you have teen drivers.
Yeah.
Um, would you recommend that they go buy a car? Or are you gonna say, nah, drive mom and dad's car? What would you do?
I think it depends on your circumstances and your priorities, but I kind of anymore I kind of look at things from an overall financial wellness perspective, and
Okay,
I just look at how expensive cars are and how expensive it is to own a car and operate a car, and I think if I had known then what I know now, that I might make the decision to just try to live without a car. As much as
oh,
I hate to say it, because I do love cars and I don't have anything against cars on principle or anything like that. But from a financial standpoint, if I could take all that money that I had spent on that first car that I bought, plus the insurance that I spent
mhm,
on it. If I had taken all that money and invested it for that time period, that'd be a good chunk of money that I'd have
would
right
be.
now. And
You
so
wouldn't have
that's
a car.
yeah, but I wouldn't have a car. And so how would I have navigated that? That's a good question. That's a totally fair question. And so if you've got to have a car, yeah, I I would drive my parents' cars. It wouldn't be a priority for me to spend my own money on a car. I would just be as resourceful as I can. And if I had to buy a car because my parents didn't have an extra one, um, I would just get something that runs, um, that
To get
kind
you
of
point
fits.
A to point B.
Yeah, that gets you from point A to point B, and any money you could save on it, the better.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of kids nowadays, and I just don't know how. I just don't know how they would do that. You know,
Yeah. No, that's the thing, right?
It just doesn't add
How do
up.
you save up enough money to, pay cash for a car? Man, the prices are high. Finance a car, the prices are high. The payments are high.
Yeah.
That's a challenge for sure.
Uh, I, I think the best thing you can do if you're a kid and you're thinking about you want a car, start working and earning and saving money as soon as you can, and just save all your money and get as close to paying cash for that car
Hmm.
as you can, so that you're not paying interest, that you don't find yourself in some sticky situation where you're upside down in the car that doesn't even work anymore. Because I've been
Yeah.
there, and it's horrible. Ideally, I would just, pay cash for a car. Like that sounds great, because it's so much money that you're throwing away at this thing. But in some places, in most places, I venture to say, it's a necessity. What are you going to do? And people find themselves stuck in this situation where they've got to fork over all this money month after month just to get
Right.
around.
Yeah. I guess it's a matter of priorities, right? And if owning a car and driving a nice car makes you happy, gives you contentment, then have at it.
That's what I
You know?
think is kind of a shame, is because when we were kids, we looked forward to buying a car. We wanted to have a car because it was cool to have a car. It was cool to drive. You look forward to just having this cool thing,
It's freedom.
that's it's
Yeah.
like it not so you weren't necessarily looking at it as transportation, as you were looking at it like a fun thing to own. And it's great that it provides transportation and everything, but it was, you look forward to it, and now it's like, it's so stressful thinking about how you're going to pay for it. and how you're going to get from point A to point B. And it seems like all the fun is sucked out of it.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
I'm being a
I can't
pessimist.
argue with you there. And maybe it's just that we're parents and we're the ones who have to pay for it, and we look at it from a financial standpoint, and it's a
Right.
big headache for us.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. It's a matter of personal choice. If that's what floats your boat, man, enjoy it. Uh,
Yeah.
and if you don't, and your parents are willing to help you out, man, I say let your parents help you out and just you know drive whatever.
Right. Um, and when I was a kid, I was grateful to have whatever car was available to me. So like I mentioned the 78 Impala station wagon. Uh like I think some kids would just like they'd rather die than drive that around. But I was just so grateful to have something that ran, you know.
Speaking of which, there
There
you
it
go.
is.
Now
Yeah.
we had the silver version.
Yeah, that looks kind of blue, doesn't it?
Yeah, that one's
But
blue, and the paint job is a lot more shiny.
it was the most uncool thing you could have at that point in time.
Pretty much, yeah.
I feel like that right there, if you found that and it was in great shape and it ran well and everything, that would be cool. Now,
Nowadays, I'd
yeah,
want to drive it again.
yeah, that's a classic right there. It's amazing.
All right, hey, Andy, good discussion. Thanks for sharing your stories about cars and your good, wise advice from a
Well,
parent to teenagers.
I don't know. I don't know everything, but I'm just looking at the numbers and I just don't know how it works.
Well, you're
I
very
don't know just
wise to think,
how cuz
and
yeah.
we'll take that into consideration. Any other parting words of wisdom, financial guru?
You know what? Maybe finances is a whole other topic for another podcast because
Yeah,
I do actually have a lot to say about finances. And I have a feeling that a lot of what I would have to say about finances would make a lot of people upset. And because that's one of those topics that you see where it can be so controversial. Um,
well, that sounds like a good topic to talk about then.
yeah, it sounds great
Yeah,
actually.
I think we'd probably be aligned on a lot of it. I
We
bet.
probably would be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for joining us today, Andy. Thanks for talking about cars with me. I love it. Even though oh man, those Mini Coopers, they give me heartburn. But it's a car, and it's fun to talk about. So thanks for being with us today, and until next time, I'm Jared,
And I'm the brother of Jared.
and we'll see you next time.